Hello and welcome to our latest celebration episode of the No Balls Cricket podcast. Um, it's fun because we restarted this after beating Australia, after India beat Australia, and now we're back because India have beaten England. Um, but yes, it is just the two of us again. We were supposed to have Ian back on, the official dentist of Guyana cricket, but he is too busy watching the West Indies game to record.
So yeah, clearly that's been happening. Also, our very poor pitch consultant has disappeared conveniently. He's always traveling for some reason. I
He's,
I
I think,
I think I think
I think
I think
I think after that first pitch now where he gave us wrong information, he's been frantically traveling between Ahmedabad, Chennai and all just to make sure his information is maybe he's doctoring the pitch also. Who knows?
yeah, but I don't know, man.
Anyone watching in England, we will give you Niket's number. He's the guy you have to get. He is the guy who's made your team lose.
Basically, yeah, because he knows that groundsman. I don't know what his name is, but they're business partners. So just
Yeah.
Anyway, let's just do a quick roundup of. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened over the week, so we'll just do a quick roundup. First things first. In case any of you have not watched the West Indies and Sri Lanka Test T20 series, please, for the love of God, tune in. It is mental stuff. All right, the third T20 is on as we speak at this moment. When you see this recording, it will probably be 2 days old. Um, so the first T20 was an absolutely crazy game. I have never seen a match where nothing happens in the first innings, and then in the second inning, everything that you think of can happen. There was a hat trick, 1 over. Next over, same bowler, Karen Pollard puts him for 6 sixes. The West Indies finished the game in 10 overs or something. They were chasing 130. Wasn't much, but it was ridiculous. They then go on to lose the second game.
Second match, yeah.
And the third game's on right now.
The best part about all of this is that Chris Gayle is back, but has done very little so far.
That's also true. Chris Gayle is back, has done very little. But it's a fun series.
He's got opening. So Chris Gayle, by the way, declared that I can bat anywhere, I'll still be the best. I don't have to open. I can play at 3. I can play at 5, etc. I'm still Mr. Universe boss, etc., etc. And then has not done much since we moved down to 3.
Anyway, what we are going to do is we will have Ian on, the official dentist of Guyana cricket. We will have him on, and we will discuss this in greater detail. But for now, just remember that's part of the roundup. In other news, India's women were back at it today and suffered a pretty humiliating defeat. But another set of mitigating factors for that full year without international cricket, and then they end up losing their first game. So
and barely any warm up and training time for them either. Actually,
yeah,
just because they were supposed to have a camp sometime in this past year during COVID, and it never really got arranged. So obviously they've come in a little undercooked, and it showed in the first game.
So mitigating factors there as well. Thirdly, Australia have been defeated. The BBL 11 has been defeated by New Zealand 3-2 in the T20 series. Martin Guptill basically ate them for breakfast.
Yeah. It is hilarious. Australia, being RCB 11, but being RCB Australia, got 2 wins. They got their 2 wins thanks to the one RCB player on the New Zealand team.
Kyle Jamieson.
Kyle Jamieson, who is a really good test bowler, but apparently cannot keep it together at the depth in T20s, much like any other bowler who's ever played for RCB.
So basically, RCB dominates the T20 world. And the last thing on our roundup, the IPL's venues have been announced, right? Chennai is not one of them.
Neither is Mumbai.
Mumbai is.
Oh, I thought Mumbai was being not considered because of COVID.
No, Mumbai. So there are 6 venues, including, of course, Bhaijan Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad for the
with the Reliance and the Adani
end for the semis and the final for the playoffs and the finals. But 6 venues, no team is going to get to play at home, so that negates any home advantage. It's all sort of shifting.
Though Punjab, I think have like 5 games in Bangalore, which means returns to Bangalore for KL Rahul and Chris Gayle. So it's practically home games for them.
And also Delhi is going to play a lot in Mumbai, so it's a homecoming for Shreyas Iyer, Prithvi Shaw, Ajinkya Rahane, and somebody else is there also with them. Now I can't remember this buzzer, but that Delhi team has a lot of Mumbai players. Anyway, so that's the news about the IPL. It is starting on the 21st of April. We will be covering that in great depth. We will do a weekly pod on it. And we will also cover fantasy. So please watch out for that. That's going to be insanely fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that fantasy roundup should be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that concludes our roundup for the week. All right, let's move on to important activities now. Just England, haha. Sorry, I had to start with that.
I have a quick question for you. How much have you enjoyed the last 2 days living in England, rubbing it in again with however many England cricket supporters are around you?
You know, they've just gone quiet now. They were they were celebrating after the first test, moaning about the pitches for 3 weeks, and then now they've just gone zoop, bus. Because the first test, okay, fine. India were, as Ravi Shastri very rightly said, we were done. You know,
we were zombies in that match.
We were zombies. We were just done. And
again, I understand.
Yeah,
it's understandable also. After that long and emotional roller coaster of the series in Australia, to come back, recalibrate. Understandable.
Understandable, and also blame the curator for that one, and blame Niket.
And and no, biggest culprit though I think still remains Virat Kohli, unable to call correctly at the toss.
He doesn't have to call in home tosses. You do know this, right? Joe Root called correctly.
Let me put it this way: his bad luck at tosses.
Good. Very good. You corrected yourself and didn't look like an idiot. All right. But we're basically here to discuss the 4 tests, and we'll do a little roundup of the series as well. 4 test match. Obviously, so what happened was England won another toss. Oh, whoop-de-doo. And guess what they did? Went into bat first and then got spun out for 205 on the first day. Actually fought back really well in the match. Came back and had India 140 odd for 6. And then Rishabh Pant, who is due a few awards on this show, he really is. Manages to take the game away from them along with Washington Sundar. Sunny G called it probably the best counter-attacking innings he's ever seen. Ravi Shastri said the same thing. There was also that completely ridiculous reverse paddle over the slips of James Anderson, which deserves.
I think that's one of the best shots I've ever seen. One of the most ridiculous shots and best shots I've ever seen.
He won 1 lakh rupees at the presentation for that ridiculous shot. So that got its prize. So we're not going to talk about that anymore. But super inning, and then Washington Sundar, really unfortunate that he couldn't go on to get 100. And Washi's father should literally be made like a Ravi Shastri type meme page. Yeah. He said that, remember when he didn't make his 100 at the Gabba, he was like, he should have gone on and made the 100 and he wasn't happy. Here he's not happy with the tailenders for getting out the way they did.
It's unfortunate. I think Akshar Patel was a little too eager to get Washi back on strike, got run out, and then of course Ishant and Siraj survived a grand total of 3 balls between them, or 4 balls between them, whatever it was, while Washington is stranded at the other end. But also, I think these reporters who are going out and seeking Washington's dad's opinion on this, it's just like, it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just a little much, I think. We know Washington's dad's obviously going to be upset. Now, why this additional masala you're looking for, I think, is just a little dumb.
You know, what happened if you put Washington's dad along with Kumar Sangakkara's dad? That would be a fun Twitter conversation, would it not? Hashtag Kumar's dad. Hashtag Washi's dad.
It would actually be pretty fun to see some of these cricketing dads on Twitter.
Why? But can someone explain to me why is it so difficult to get approval from a South Indian sorry, they're not South. I wouldn't say from a South Asian father. Like, it's just, yaar, kya hai yaar? The poor buggers, you know what? Anyway, and okay, Washington Sundar, I can still understand. He's like brand new to Test cricket. Kumar Sangakkara, at the end of his career, he's saying he should have got more runs. Like, he made what I think Sangakkara ended with 12,000 Test runs or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, anyway, uh, approval from South Asian parents, something that is
If
well,
our,
just doesn't exist.
I
Um,
can't wait for our parents to watch this episode of the pod
yeah,
if
yeah,
they are
yeah.
watch if they ever tune in.
Anyway, um, so that was that thing. India got a 365 and 160 run lead, and you thought, ki, at least they'll make us bat again. Na?
I actually, you know what? I don't want to claim like overly over expertise or anything, but when I saw the lead, I had a slight feeling at when the Indian innings ended that, oh, you know what, this could actually be an innings victory. Um, then I fell asleep and missed most of it, but you know,
That's fine.
in my defense, it was 2 a.m. when that innings ended. So.
No, because I remember that morning we'd had a few drinks and I was supposed to wake up and watch the game. And I got up in the middle and I saw England are 4 down for 30. I'm like, this game is not even lasting till lunch. Forget this.
I actually thought when the day's play started, I thought the if India don't bat long, then this game could be over today. I thought the only way it would get into day four is if India batted to half the day, you know, which to be fair, even though Washi and Akshay Patel are fairly accomplished or at least a decent batsmen, but that would have been a tough ask of them. But I thought that was the only way we'd see a day four. I thought there was a good chance that this whole game could end at the end of the day.
But credit to England, they at least made it till the third day. No, but we're not here to gloat. We're here to discuss and dissect and gloat a little bit. Yeah. So okay. Where do we start with this series? So England were good in very flat conditions against a somewhat limited bowling attack. The appearance of Akshar Patel in that second test match, I think, changed the narrative more than the pitches.
Yeah, I think Akshar Patel. I mean, he surprised both of us. Honestly, I remember you and I when we were doing our series preview podcast. Neither of us thought he would be in the 11. We thought it should be Kuldeep Yadav all the way through. And to be fair, I think I mean Akshar had a great series. I think Kuldeep would have been a fairly good bet. But I think take nothing away. Akshar has had a fantastic debut. And Ravi Shastri's mentioned that he's just because of how good Jadeja's been, Akshar has had to wait his turn when it comes to playing in tests. He's been around the international setup, played a decent number of ODIs and T20s for India, but this was his chance and he's taken it with aplomb.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think he was unbelievable, and England's frailties against left arm spin, or sorry, England's frailties against slow bowling that goes straight has been exposed. Because of it,
England's frailties against pie chuckers, basically.
No, that was only Kevin Pietersen. Oh, by the way, speaking of Kevin Pietersen, if anybody is even remotely interested in Legends cricket, there's something called the Road Safety World Series. That's all. And Kevin Pietersen against Bangladesh was bowled by he's playing Bangladesh. So obviously he was bowled by a left-arm spinner.
And meanwhile, Virendra Sehwag just played another 56 of 30 at some point in that series. So
Viru is Viru, yeah. And Rishabh Pant credits the ability to play that ridiculous reverse sweep to Virendra Sehwag because he set the template for it. This is an actual Twitter interaction.
Yeah. It's also worth noting, though, obviously it's a legend series. I don't think anyone was expecting a lot of preparation. Sehwag is like, I batted in the nets for half an hour the day before the match. That was the only preparation I have for going into the series. And then he's just flaying everyone.
It's Viru Sehwag. The guy will walk in, kaise bata, bang, 6.
Anyway, we can venerate Sehwag for the next hour if we wanted to. Yeah. But coming back to Akshar Patel and
let's not get distracted. England against left arm spin just equals failure. Akshar Patel ends the series with a bowling average of 10.
Akshar Patel, funnily enough, until his very last innings, this guy is a long time considered as a batting all-rounder. Until his very last batting innings of the series, he had more wickets than runs.
That speaks volumes of how poor England's batting was. Look, I can understand in the Chennai Test match because that was genuinely a tough pitch for them. I can see where where they could fall short on that. Ahmedabad was a lot. The first day-night test was just a lottery, because even the Indians struggled. So I'm not holding that against that test match against them at all. But I think we knew they were bad in these conditions, but just how bad, I think, became apparent in that final test match. Because I just feel that the openers didn't have a clue as to how to play spin. Okay, Sibley got a bit unlucky in the second inning, sweeping and getting caught off short legs pad. But there were some dismissals in there. I mean, Root was again done by Ashwin. Stokes tried to play a bit of a ridiculous lap sweep kind of thing. He was in Superman mode with the ball, but with a bat, again, it wasn't, And they just kept finding ways of getting out. And Akshar Patel's straight ball, that is like dynamite, man.
It is ridiculous. I think Crawley, who up until the last match probably was one of the few people who could have, few batsmen who would have really emerged from the series with credit. Then suddenly he's just like decided that my strategy against Akshar Patel is to hit him out of the attack, and he gets out like in a very stupid shot, in a very stupid way. It's Johnny Bairstow comes in with a reputation, one of England's best players of spin. Yeah, I think. Listen, I like Sri Lanka as a country. It's a beautiful place. I love many Sri Lankan cricketers. I think Sri Lankan cricket in general has done a lot to inflate England's ego when it comes to batting against spin, because they've just outside of people like, I mean, obviously you had Murli in a previous era, but outside of Rangna era, they've just not had a world-class spinner for a long time. And England have played those spinners, won against them, and thought, we can bat well against spin. Then they show up in India and they get hammered.
To be fair to England, if Sri Lanka had batted in those games properly, like they had one inning where they shot themselves in the foot, in both games, right?
Yeah.
If they had batted properly in that one inning, the way they batted in the other innings in both those games, they would have probably beaten England.
They probably would have come in. Yeah, they could have with some smarter batting.
Exactly.
And literally just smarter. No, it wasn't inept batting. It was just once a match they decided I'm going to hit out, and the other innings of the match they decided, so let's play properly. Had they done let's play properly for both innings of the match, they probably would have won 2-0.
So so the thing is, in England then end up encountering a tired India side in Chennai.
Yeah, in the first match.
In the first game.
And they win the toss. They get the best batting conditions. They get a slightly freakish bowling performance from someone like Dom Bess. We'll get to Dom Bess a bit later, but so and poor batting also in both the innings.
Yeah.
Really, but first innings especially. Second innings was a bit of a lottery because the pitch was deteriorating by that point. But poor batting from India in the first innings. And to be fair, they played well in that test match. They won it, but after that their incompetence was shown.
Now, as I've said multiple times on the pod in the last couple of weeks, that first innings in Chennai was, I think, the poorest I've seen India bat, and they still got 330. It was probably one of the worst batting performances I've seen from India over a long, long time.
And that's counting the
36 all out.
Yeah, and that's also not. I mean, I'm not even talking about the 36 all out. I'm talking about the other batting performances in this series. Like the pink ball test was, it was a lot.
Yeah. Because that was in flat conditions, I think. I think you have to look at it in perspective.
Exactly. That was a batting paradise of a pitch for most part, at least for the first 3 days. And granted, they only started batting at the end of day 2, or in fact, they started batting in halfway through day 3.
Halfway through day 3, yeah.
Yeah, but they still should have batted better on that day.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if India had lasted maybe 120 overs, got to 400, that game would have ended in a draw. But they didn't manage to do that. Then you go to the second test, obviously, and okay, they get a bit lucky with the toss, you could say. But that pitch, honestly, I don't think the toss would have made much of a difference.
I think because you had players like Rohit Sharma, who has been.
I mean, that inning was spectacular.
Yeah,
I think that has to be one of the best hundreds I've seen in a long, long time. They were tough conditions. They weren't easy. Jack Leach was bowling well, and the way he commanded it, he swept, he used his feet. His ability to read length, go back, took on Moeen Ali as well. He batted really well, and that changed. I think that game.
I think that was a series defining. Yeah, that changed the series. That innings.
And Virat Kohli's come out and said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then you obviously have it's actually twofold, right? It's like England when it comes to spin, they bat poorly against spin. They also, and I know Jack Leach has had a good series, but they just also have not had a really good spin bowler for a long time. Graham Swan was probably the last one that they had. Moeen Ali has a good record, let's be honest, but when it comes to bowling against Indian batsmen in India, he's picked up his wickets, but he's also been hammered for runs, and he's probably the second best on that list in this past decade. Panesar had one, Monty had one good series. That's it. Every other England spinner who's come to India has just been carted around, basically.
Yeah, I mean but we know that opposition spinners don't generally do that well in India.
True. That which is true. I mean, this is something even Murli struggled.
Unless
Even Vaughan struggled.
Vaughan struggled, Murli struggled, but unless you're you're a really good opposition spinner. Vaughan had his moment in 2004. He didn't do too much, but
Yeah.
And then Nathan Lyon obviously has done really well in India over the years. So you have to be a quality spinner to survive in these conditions. And yes, there's help, but you still have to bowl well. And I think England just didn't manage to do that. And Dom Bess in the fourth test match was a liability. And they went in playing an extra batsman with Ben Foakes batting at 8, Stokes the second seamer. And then you have Dom Bess bowling pies, basically, long hops, full tosses. Yeah.
I genuinely, by the end of this series, listen, this is the whole point of this pod is we just like goofing around. We will banter everyone. But in seriousness, I've genuinely felt really sorry for Dom Bess by the end of the series because he's been thrown in the deep end. This is a guy who's second. He's like the second spinner for a side that's in the second tier of the championship, if I remember correctly, in Somerset. He's 23, so he's like at the early stages of the development of his career, and he's playing in England. Like even when you're playing in Somerset is one of the spin friendly places to play in England county cricket. But it's not an easy place to develop as a spinner. And then you come to a place like India where you can't afford to bowl one bad ball in an over, because if you do that consistently, you will just get carted around. All it takes is that one bad ball in an over for an England spinner.
You know what? I think that there's a problem here. I think the thing is, forget anything that they've been saying about county cricket and all of that. I just think Dom Bess as a spin bowler, he's been very lucky to pick up all the wickets that he has. A, B, he's just not consistent enough. So how should a player who's that inconsistent as a bowler himself? Okay, he's 23 and all of that. But you look at spinners around the world, they've all come in younger. They've all come in at like early stages of their career. Nathan Lyon made his debut probably at 23.
Sure, but that's not. I get what you're saying.
But my point is, simply put, my point is, I just feel that England, Jack Leach is a consistent spinner. Like he was bowling in good areas. He didn't give you any freebies. I think if you're not the most skilled spinner and you can hold an end up, bowl decently, don't bowl too many bad balls. He was bowling one bad ball every over and it was just getting too easy to score runs. But I think my point is the minimum you can expect from a spinner is consistency. And if he can't give you that, I don't think he should be there.
Listen, I don't think he was ready for this challenge. I think that's probably something we thought even before the series started, and it's kind of been borne out. But I also just think that the reason he wasn't ready for this challenge is just because he needs a lot more work. I think he needs to spend. He probably needs to be playing in a setup where he firstly is basically, I don't know if lead spinner, if he's ready for that responsibility, but he has. So I'm not saying that he might not be ready to be a lead spinner even for a county side yet, but somewhere where he's getting the backing of, okay, you know what, bowl 20 overs in this innings, whether they cost me 80 or whether you can. It takes a few times, right, where you consistently bowl 20 overs in an innings, you'll bring that 80 down to 50 at some point. He's just not gotten that chance yet because he's backing up Jack Leach effectively, even in county cricket, and that's what he's ended up having to do for England as well. And he's doing it unlike in England. Here he's doing it against the best players of spin. I know India had their batting struggles in the series, but consistently these are the players you expect that just are not going to give you a second to breathe if you miss your line or your length by even a centimeter.
Look, I'm not defending England's treatment of him at all. I think there are deep-rooted issues in the management of how they rotate their players, and I'll get into that in a bit. But I think they were a bit unfair on Bess not playing him in the second test after he'd done okay in the first game. He had not bowled badly, I don't think, in the first game. I think he was a bit lucky, yes, but he didn't bowl badly by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah, he was. I mean, and it just goes to show. It was for example, that first Test match, Jack Leach got taken to the cleaners by Pant, but they backed him, right? And Leach bowled a lot better throughout the rest of the series. Um, he improved through. I think he's a much better bowler now for four matches after that, or what, seven, 8 bowling innings after that, compared to what he was at the beginning of the series. But that's because he had the backing of his manager, and fair enough, he was the lead spinner effectively. Best just didn't have that. He got
no, but the other thing is right. Okay, I'm just going to compare this for comparison's sake now. I'm not saying there's any logic between the two, and there's no comparison actually, but I'm just going to compare the two side spinners and the way that it all panned out. You had Shahbaz Nadeem, Washington Sundar, and Ashwin in the first Test match. Okay?
Yeah.
Nadeem was terrible. Okay? By any stretch of imagination, he was terrible. Right? As soon as Akshar Patel comes in, it's a sea change because there's pressure from both ends.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's true. That's completely true. Yeah.
Right? England go in with Bess and Leach in the first game. Leach bowls really well. Really well in the first game. All right? Bess bowled okay. He didn't bowl badly. He was okay. Second Test match, they changed it. India had to make a change because Akshar Patel, we know, is going to be a better spinner than Shahbaz Nadeem anyway. So make that change, and it all works out. Right? England change, bring in Moeen Ali. Now, Moeen Ali is, you know what you're going to get from him. He's, at a stage of his career where everyone's seen enough of him. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. He's not the most consistent, but he has that ability to bowl the magic ball. And,
exactly.
So that's, if that was what they were after, then you got exactly what you thought was going to happen with Moeen Ali, which is fine, right? Then this whole drama about sending Moeen Ali home for compassionate leave or whatever. I'll get into that in a second. And then you don't play Bess in the game where you expect the ball to do the most.
Yeah, exactly. Not picking him for that third Test, I think probably.
I think that was a vote of, no confidence in his ability.
Yeah.
And then to throw him and chuck him in the fourth game and be like, and then play one less bowler in addition to throwing him in there, I think that was really unfair on him. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
But having said all of that, the least he could have done was be consistent, and he wasn't. So I have no sympathy for either the England management or Bess himself for the way that all panned out.
I think it's easier to say from the sidelines that Bess needed to be consistent. The fact is, he's just not that. He hasn't reached that stage of development, right, for his bowler. I think Dom Bess, if he's back properly, England will probably tour 3-4 years later. I guess they'll probably be back in India. Who knows? 2-3 years later, he might be a fairly better bowler at that point in time in his career compared to he is now. Who knows how his career is going to pan out. But yeah, at this you need when you're playing in the Test 11. Yes, you need to be consistent. But if you haven't developed that skill to bowl like that, obviously you're going to struggle.
The other thing I think people are missing is England carried much like India did when they went to Australia. They carried a whole coterie of net bowlers and extra players, and instead of going with the sort of standard 17 that you're used to, I think teams are now traveling with 25 players, 25, 30 players.
Yeah, I think that's a COVID-induced thing, which probably will end soon after once you don't have to stay in a bubble.
The point people are missing here is England went in with, like India carried Natarajan, Washington, and all. England went in with a man named Amar Virdi. Now, if anyone's seen the way Amar Virdi bowls, he's a much more sort of classical off spinner to the way Bess bowls. Bess bowls really sort of flat through the air, not much loop. Doesn't really turn it a lot. Virdi is like a bit of a Harbhajan Singh kind of bowler where he'll give it a loop, it'll really spin. So I was actually surprised that they didn't give him a go in the Test series, because I thought he would have been an interesting pick, because maybe you're throwing him into the deep end, but it's something different, and he's probably slightly more consistent than Bess would be.
Possibly. Again, we're talking about someone who's played not even 30 first class matches, I guess. Similar age to Dom Bess. At some point in time, you also have to think, let's take a punt on someone and see if it pays off or not. Especially when you know that what you're getting with Dom Bess is this. You know that he's not going to be a controlling bowler, so it's like, okay, let's see what Tama Virji does. I understand that selection might have made sense.
Then we have England's deeper rooted selection issues and the fact that they still don't have a proper top three.
Yeah, their top three, they probably shouldn't have sent Rory Burns back, except for they kind of had to because he also was not batting well. And then of course Bairstow came back, so it's like Bairstow's our number 3. But yeah, the issue is that they don't have a number 3. Sibley and Crawley have each had 1 or 2 good innings so far on both the Sri Lanka and the India tours, where you're like, okay, if they can put it together, you have an opening pair. I mean, they also had some really bad innings, but fair enough. Openers touring always struggle. Wherever, Australian openers have struggled, Indian openers have struggled outside of India. It's tough to bat on tour.
I always maintain that when you're playing spins specifically, as Kevin Peterson put in that article on the Cricket Monthly, where he was talking about the 180 odd that he made against India in Bombay, it was one of the most brilliant innings I've ever seen in my life. Let's not get any mistakes about this. He always maintained that it was his ability to trust his defense.
Yep.
That got him through that. Now, the thing with playing spin that I've always noticed, and having seen a lot of cricket, obviously, growing up in India, you watch a lot of people, lots of foreign batsmen come play, and most of the people that do well tend to find their own way against spin. It's not something that's taught. It's you sort of figure it out on the go. Sort of, you watch Steve Smith bat in 2017 in that series, where he that Pune Test match. It was a terrible pitch, right? And he got a bit lucky as he got dropped a couple of times. But he found a way to score runs. He found his own way.
Absolutely.
You look at Peterson, and Alistair Cook is another great example of this. He found his own way. And you look at, you go back down the years. You look at, go as far back as 2001, Matthew Hayden.
And Matthew Hayden came in at that time under a decent, he went into that series under a decent amount of pressure because people thought if he fails in the series, he might get dropped.
Yeah, but I mean, he made 200s and a double. I think the second one of that was a double 100 in the last Test match. And you look at people like that, and all it proves to you is it's and they were saying it on comms as well. When they were talking about what England did when they came in 84-5. Again, Sunny G was saying that they had players that sort of found their own way, David Gower, Mike Gatting, that kind of player. You'd find your own way against spinners. I think the problem England faced here was, other than Root, who seemed to find a way of getting out. He looked really good. He batted well, looked confident, looked set, and then bang, Ashwin gets him.
Yeah, and also Ashwin is Ashwin. So that's.
But that's the challenge. I mean, you're always going to come across spinners the caliber of Ashwin in India. I mean, you look back over the years, you'd have the spin quartet, then you had Ravi Shastri and Maninder Singh, Lakshman Shivramakrishna. You go further down the years, you had Kumble, Harbhajan, now Ashwin and Jadeja, and now Ashwin and Akshar Patel. So you're always going to find that kind of spinner in India. Which is going to trouble you, and you have to find ways of scoring runs. And England just couldn't do it.
And England, I think a lot of touring teams are guilty of this sort of thinking where it's all about having a set strategy against something, which sounds really good on paper for going into okay, we have a plan, this is our plan, etc. But a lot of times, especially when you're playing quality spin in India, you can't have your set strategy is not going to work. No. So, for example, and what I'm specifically referring to here is, we're going to sweep the spinners because by sweeping we'll throw them off their lengths and whatnot. But you're talking about someone like Ashwin, who, okay, fine, maybe you got him the first innings, that very first innings when you scored 500 and odd, 530, whatever it was, and he struggled. Your strategies worked, whatever. Ashwin's going to adapt. Ashwin will figure out how to counter that. Most Indian spinners who reach the international level, not everyone is going to be as good as Ashwin, but everyone will have a strategy for that, where it's like, okay, they'll figure out, okay, Akshar Patel, you cannot sweep him because he just bowls too quick.
Exactly.
So that's the problem. Then you don't have a plan B. It's like, oh shit, the sweep isn't working. Now what do I do? They don't know. And it goes back to what you're saying. A lot of other players have figured that out. Okay, I have the sweep shot. If I can pull it out, I can pull it out. But I have other shots to play against spin as well. And they haven't. I think the moment that first set strategy of let's sweep and push them off the length and whatnot, the moment that strategy stopped working, everyone was like, "Oh fuck, what do we do now?"
But I mean, look, their method of playing spin was completely summed up by two people. Dan Lawrence, who somehow found a way by the end of it. He found a way, got to 50,
Yeah.
right? And Ollie Pope. Now, it's two opposite ends of the same spectrum. Lawrence used his feet, tried to sweep, tried to put the spinners off their lengths, trusted his defense a bit, and it worked out for him, right?
Yeah,
But Ollie
and
Pope,
discovered his footwork also. Exactly. Like by the end of the series, he knew his footwork was, against spin was a lot better, and Ollie Pope was all at sea.
Ollie Pope's the exact polar. It's two ends of the spectrum, right? Lawrence is the
Yeah.
one who's using his feet, using his brain, trying to figure it out. Ollie Pope is just Bhagwan ke naam pe, main aage ja raha hu.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's another thing, right? Like when it's a again, using your feet. It sounds great. It's a strategy you think about. You have to know what you're doing. It can't just be, I will use my feet against the spinners, and then therefore I will charge at spinners willy-nilly and do whatever. It doesn't work like that.
So that was one of the main problems. After they made 578 in Chennai in the first innings of the Test match, they passed 200 once.
Exactly, and that too they eked past 200 in that last inning. Perfectly, 205 all out. Yeah,
but that's over 3.5 Test matches. You batted 6 times. They lost all 80 wickets. We won by an innings in the last game. We didn't bat once.
Yeah, and it's interesting, by the way. We're going here. India didn't cross 350 until the final match. Not in any of their batting innings, and yet won fairly comfortably in the end. But it just mattered that when it counted in that second match against Chennai, in that second match in Chennai first innings, and in that last match in Ahmedabad, when they needed to, they pulled out the necessary batting innings.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we were always moaning about how Sam Curran used to do it to us in that series in England when we first started the pod. And you have Rishabh Pant, Washington Sundar, Ashwin even did it to them here.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the same thing in these conditions. Now imagine, this is the scary bit for England. Imagine having to play Ravi Jadeja in these conditions. Oh man, he would have been a nightmare.
Jadeja would have been a nightmare. Jadeja would, and I mean, although to be fair, I don't know how much better he would have done than Akshar in terms of pure numbers. 27 wickets across three matches, but
he would have been an absolute nightmare to face. And that's the challenge again now when you have India with those two absolutely world-class spinners. Ravi Jadeja has a Test match bowling average of 25 over 50 tests. That is obscenely good. I mean, obscenely good.
He is, I think, both by raw stats and I think even by the ICC ratings before this latest round of matches, he was actually ranked ahead of Ashwin for quite a while. Like he was literally the number 1 ranked spinner in the world in tests for a good while. And then of course you throw in his batting ability, his fielding ability.
No,
I have a friend who's been suggesting that it's time to drop Rahane and just play Jadeja at 5.
But you know what? We'll get to India in a second. I just want to go through now that we mentioned this. I just want to get through the whole bubble life thing.
Yeah. And we've had a debate on Twitter on this.
We've had a bit of a tiff on Twitter, and you guys can check it out if you want. But basically, the cliff notes from that is that India, and Ravi Shastri mentioned this in his interviews after the game, where he said that most of the Indian players have been in that bubble for about 5 months. Since the IPL.
Starting from the IPL,
Yeah, since the IPL. Okay, and they've bonded and come through, and you've put your best team out. Okay? And it helps that you're winning. So winning in Australia, winning here, it helps. But the difference between India and England was, England went in with that bubble key. You have to let players go. They'll go back. They'll come in. Ins and outs. They didn't really ever play their best 11, or did they? I mean, what is their best 11? Do you even know?
I mean, I think there are two questions here. One is, did they play the best 11? And secondly is, what do they know? Do they know what their best 11 is? Forget us knowing. I think the bigger issue outside of bubble management and whatnot is that they don't know.
That's one thing. My other thing with the bubble issue is, it speaks of a bit of mental toughness, does it not?
So this is where you and I differ, where I think it definitely, what India has done, what all of the Indian players have done from the start of the last IPL to this point, which is a good 5-6 months now. Um, that definitely speaks to the toughness of the mental toughness of the Indian players. No arguments there, no debates, not questioning that one bit. What England have done in terms of managing people, giving people a rest and allowing them to go back home, come back, etc. I don't think that shows a lack of toughness. That's all what I mean is I think it shows a lot of awareness about mental health and understanding the challenges of being away for 4 months, 5 months on end and deciding, what, we're not going to put anyone through that. Um, and and therefore having their rotation policy. To me, I don't disagree with the rotation policy. I also don't think that the rotation policy and also players volunteering if they did to go back home, like saying, "I want to go back home now." I don't think that is any lack of character or toughness on their part. I think it's just a very natural. Uh, it's one of those things where, like, if you and if I decide right now, next year I'm going to run a marathon, and you decide, fuck that, I don't want to run a marathon. I do my training for the rest of the year. I do it. I run my marathon. Great, good for me. You decide that you don't want to do the marathon. You go ahead, live your life however you want to. Also great and good for you. I don't think one shows that I'm tougher than you are in any case. It's
No, but
practically
this
that.
is, but you're okay. So this is a professional sport. B, there are two as an English player, there are two assignments that are the most difficult for you. One is an away to Ashes tour to Australia. Always, that's the pinnacle for them in terms of Test cricket. Just below that will probably be India because it's the toughest place to go to for an Englishman.
Yeah.
So I think I just feel that with that whole rotation policy, they shot themselves in the foot by not giving themselves a chance. Now, then you come to the other issue is when no one knows what their best team is anyway.
I think.
But
I mean,
the
what I
thing
would
is
say,
by
I
not
think they
having.
did.
But the thing is, by not having players available, like Bairstow's gone and he'll come back for the ODI series. But what do you really want to win? Do you want to be? Is that more important than the Test series? I mean, Bairstow went, he came back. Butler went. Now he's going to come back for the ODIs. Is he your number one? First of all, is he your first choice wicketkeeper? What was Ben Foakes doing there?
So I think, these are a bunch of other questions, right? That go outside of the rotation policy. I think what I would say on the rotation policy is what I think is England said, we will put out a competitive side regardless of who's playing. In effect, they're saying, instead of saying, oh, we are backing our best 11, what they're saying is we're backing all these players to be good for us. The point is that ultimately a lot of them didn't end up, performing up to expectations. But in the sense of having that rotation policy in itself, it's backing the strength of your squad, the strength of the depth of talent you believe you have, and which I think is a fair thing to do. It's one thing if you think I only have 20 players good enough or 15 players good enough, so therefore I can't rotate, or therefore if I rotate I'm fucked. That's a separate point altogether. But they decided we have these 25 players. We are confident that these 25 players, in some whatever combination we pull out of them, are going to be good enough for us to compete. Whether that ended up being proven wrong is a separate point altogether.
So England had 3 or 4 standout players, I would say, in the series. Joe Root, obviously. Ben Stokes, obviously. Jimmy Anderson.
Yeah.
Who surprised me how good he can actually be in those kind of conditions. He was absolutely outstanding. We have hated on James Anderson a lot on this pod, but man, chops, you have to give it to him.
This series we have to give it to
him. We have to give it to him. And Jack Leach. I thought Jack Leach's resilience. He got slaughtered by Pant in the first game to come back and keep going at it and at it and at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely makes sense. Ben Foakes keeping, brilliant. But
not as good a batsman, obviously, as Butler.
That's the thing. And if you look at the package that India have in Rishabh Pant, now that his keeping in this series, just by the way, has been absolutely phenomenal.
His keeping has improved leaps and bounds. And I think Ravi Shastri, if anyone has seen Shastri's post-match interviews and press conferences, watch how he speaks about Pant, because he makes it very clear that they effectively drew a line in the sand with Pant saying, dude, take this seriously. Give the words Shastri said were, you have to respect this game, and that means putting in a lot of work that involved with Pant. It involved practicing his keeping, getting fitter, all of which he did, and now we, was. And to be fair, we're still only scratching the surface when it comes to Pant's like potential and what he could end up being at the end of his career. But it's shown the way he's kept in this series to spin, some of the catches he's taken. I mean, the diving catches he's taken off fast bowling was spectacular. But some of the takes he's had against spinners have also been some of the stumpings he's pulled off. Absolutely brilliant stuff.
I think what encapsulated it was the stumping of Ollie Pope in that second innings. That ball jumped.
Like
he's taken it here, and within a flash, he's whipped the bails off. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I think it just speaks leaps and bounds. But what I'm trying to say is, having someone like Rishabh Pant, he's straight out of the line of Adam Gilchrist, Kumar Sangakkara, MS Dhoni, that kind of player, and probably better than MS Dhoni. No, you know what? There was a
I started off disagreeing with you, but actually no. I think he will end up being a better Test player than Dhoni by the end of his career. Where he ends up in limited overs in the overall pantheon, and obviously Dhoni will have the advantage of being an all-time great captain as well, which we don't know if Pant will be a captain or not. He may end up being.
You never know. But the thing is, I think as a Test cricketer, yes, probably you'd say. I'm not going to compare him to Dhoni, right? I think that's a bit unfair because he's still too young. But there's a stat that said that there are only there's only 2 wicket keepers that have scored hundreds in India, Australia, and England. You know the other one?
I'm assuming the other one is Gilchrist.
Exactly. Only 2 wicket keepers in the history of the game. That is how good Rishabh Pant can be.
Has been already.
So that's about Pant. Obviously, Ben Foakes doesn't offer you the same package.
Ben Foakes, I mean, he's hit a century in Sri Lanka at a time when Sri Lanka was a slightly better.
You're bringing this up again.
He is obviously not as good a batsman as Buttler. I don't think anyone would argue that. He did, although I think acquitted himself well in terms of the context of England being shit in this series against spin in general. Amongst those, Foakes was probably one of the people who was less shit comparatively. But the keeping situation, much like a lot of selection issues have been with England, has been a nightmare. Because basically, Bairstow almost had it as a condition for himself. I am only, I have to keep. I'm not going to be a batsman. Because I think for the longest time, he thought, if I don't have the gloves, then I will be under fire as a batsman, and I don't want that pressure. Being a wicket keeper in the Test 11 guarantees that I'm always going to be in the Test side. I want that security. Then they decided to give the gloves to Buttler. They moved Bairstow up to number 3, and the point is that Bairstow, Buttler, along with people like Stokes, Pope, Lawrence, all lower order batsmen, all people who should be batting 5 or below. Maybe Stokes in a different series could be 4 and Root could be 3, but not going to happen. So, point being, they keep unearthing these batsmen who are supremely talented batsmen, but none of them are really top order batsmen. But you've decided that because these guys have the talent to be good batsmen, we will shoehorn them into the 11. It's not going to work. You need specialists. You
do, and especially in the top 3 in a batting lineup.
Yeah.
So now, but I just want to finish on the Johnny Bairstow point with England. Do you know what? He's been around for so long now. It's such a frustrating. It's almost like Rohit Sharma in a way. You've thrown him in every situation, and the only one that stuck was him batting at 6 and being the wicketkeeper.
Yeah, he has a decent average at 5 and 6. I think it's over 40 or mid to low 40s is his average at 5 and 6. At 3, it's shit because he's not a number 3 batsman. He has played 1 or 2 really good innings at 3, but he's not as secure there.
So I mean, I think this is going to be his last shot at Test cricket, probably, if they give him another chance after the series.
I would be surprised if he's on the Ashes tour. I would be extremely surprised.
Yeah,
or at least he might be part of the squad, but I don't think he'll be in the 11.
So let's put it this way. Okay, with England, you have a question mark over number 3. Your openers are a bit green. Fine. Your question mark over number 3. You have a question mark over who your best wicketkeeper is. Is it Foakes? Is it Bairstow? Is it Buttler?
I think, I mean, you have a question mark on that front, definitely. But I think if you're not having rotation and whatnot, I think Buttler is the one who gets in. He's the first choice. Yeah, as keeper.
And then obviously you have the issues with the spinners. And to be honest to them, I think winning 1 Test was a pretty good achievement. But
it was.
Having said that, the way they capitulated in the last 3 just shows you, I think they are a really long way off India, Australia, and New Zealand. A long,
It's
long way
interesting
off.
because we are going to go to England. I mean, obviously for the World Test Championship final, but then there's a series in
In
England
England, yeah.
after that. And it's a 5-test series, and of course, much like this series where we've won 3-1, but it's not necessarily a reflection of how close a series it was. Last time we were in England, it was a 4-1 win for England, but it could have been a lot closer. India had their chances at times to even
Yeah.
win a lot more than that one test match. So it'll be interesting to see. And then it could just be that England, again, are 2-0, 3-0 side better than us at home, or at least take better advantage of the conditions or whatever, reasons that end up being behind that could happen. But that will be a fascinating series to see.
Yeah, that will be fun. And World Test Championship final. I'm going to see what I can get tickets for. Honestly, I'm here. I'm going to try and
I
enjoy
would
it.
love to.
Um,
I am dependent on vaccine rollouts in the US, but
Right.
if that's possible, I would
Yeah.
I would love to hop over the pond.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
should, as a news info about the World Test Championship final. It was supposed to be at Lords. It's most likely being moved to Southampton now because I think they're just not convinced of being able to have a bio bubble in London. And of course, in the last year, they've hosted both West Indies and Pakistan in Test series that were only in Southampton and
Manchester. Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
it's quite
it's
possible what's going to happen.
it's fairly convenient for them because both of those have hotels on site. So that it allows you to
Yes.
train and have a bio bubble all at the same time.
They probably won't pick Manchester because Manchester is a home test for India.
Although Southampton is closer to London. Speaking of
Southampton is closer to Indian conditions. Manchester just has a lot more Indian fans who are going to show up.
the entirety of the Curry Mile. It's a very Manchester thing to say. Speaking of Manchester, I am stuck here with no good Indian food. Anyone with any recommendations, please put them in the bloody comments. So that's one thing. We'll move on to the Indian.
Apparently, you and Veer Das both share the same issues of living in England. Can't find good Indian food.
I was a little hungover. I called for butter chicken, black dal, and garlic naan. I got some form of butter chicken, which was serviceable. I got a garlic naan that was, I can't really call it naan. It was just leavened bread or something. It didn't taste right. And black dal was like, ghar ka masoor dal. It wasn't like, that dal makhni nice. I don't know what it was. It wasn't black. Like, wo jo kali dal, no, that it wasn't that. So I'm a little bit upset by that.
Listen, you had the option to move to New York. You would have gotten really good New York, good Indian food here. Not the least of which would have been my mom's cooking, but let's let bygones be bygones.
I did not get your mom's cooking in Bombay. I don't think I would have got it in New York. Leave it at that.
You actually would have had a higher likelihood of getting my mom's cooking here than in Bombay, actually.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Fine. और तेरे को मेरे हाथ का खाना मिलता था. For anybody who doesn't speak any Hindi / Urdu, that basically means he would have gotten my cooking, essentially. Anyway,
which you keep claiming is pretty good. So we should.
Proofs in the pudding. All right, moving on. Moving on, personal barbs aside. Let's move on to India. What they did well, what they did badly. Again, I'll go back to this. First test match, worst I've seen them bat. Second test match, Rohit Sharma was outstanding, and Ashwin just took the game away from England with the bat. Third test, let's not go into that because it was a bit of a lottery. This game, the top order really again just kind of fell away, didn't it? I mean, Pant and Sundar came out.
Rohit had a really good innings, and I think he just played one bad shot to get out, which of course is the Rohit Sharma way. But he had anchored that innings really well. But everyone else just.
No, I think Rohit got an absolute jaffer from Ben Stokes. I mean, that was
He did also get.
So did Kohli. So did Kohli.
He did get a good ball. Yeah, he did. But Kohli could have left his ball. Rohit probably should not have been trying to, hit that ball into cow corner. But they were both good deliveries. No rest. Rahane also got a good ball from Anderson, but again, much like Kohli, could have left it. Should have left it. And Rahane was actually looking really good in that innings. He was looking very good. But this is becoming a little bit of a
problem with Rahane, isn't it?
Yeah. Every so often, like that Melbourne test got that century. Then, okay, the last test in Australia, in that chase, he came in with the plan of I'm going to score quickly. He didn't score a big innings, but he kept the innings moving along, did his job fair. Um, First test doesn't perform. Second test, he's the one who's Rohit Sharma's partner, gets to a 60 odd or 70 odd, whatever it was, while Rohit is crafting a great innings at the other end. Then after that falls off again. So he's in this phase, and I think, to be fair, when I say this phase, his entire career has been this phase where he has a run of one or two good innings and a run of two or three very not so productive matches, then pulls off one innings again, keeps his place. Rahane, I don't think it's that outlandish an idea what I suggested earlier. Bring Jadeja in. He's a great batsman. I think everyone underrates him because
If
you've
you
seen
bring
him.
Jadeja in, you can actually move Washington Sundar up the order.
Or Washington Sundar, I think, honestly, is probably a top order batsman.
Top order batsman, isn't he?
Who can bowl a little bit, and
Yeah,
if he works on his bowling, maybe become a much better bowler. Not to say he's a bad bowler, but he's not, even
I think
Akshar Patel level.
I think on Washington Sundar, I think Ravi Shastri summed it up pretty perfectly. He said that he's probably a top order batsman, and when he does go back to playing Ranji Trophy cricket, whoever's the coach at Tamil Nadu has to bat him in the top three. I think that will do him a world of good. They say he's an opener, but for me, he looks more like a natural number three than an opener.
He does look like a natural number three. That'd
yeah.
be an interesting one because I've been wondering who Pujara's long-term replacement would be. And to be fair, you have your eye on the Ranji game a lot more than I do. But that would be an interesting one. But speaking of Pujara had not struggled against left-arm spin ever. Like he has dominated left-arm spin, and then Jack Leach happens to him, and somehow he can't figure it out.
I think with Pujara, it's a bit of an aberration. I think you should have to look past it. I think quietly just let him have this one bad series. He's been so good for so long. There's no point in discussing Pujara or Kohli. Even though Kohli is now his century-less barren run has now stretched for, 470 something days.
Yeah, and I think it's 12 innings or 13 innings now.
He's not got 100 in any format, just by the way, in the last year and a bit. So hopefully he gets one in the one-day series and breaks that duck.
He's played some really good innings. He's played some really good innings, but just not gotten to three figures.
2-3 figures, exactly. That's that. Rishabh Pant, obviously, we've spoken about with the bat.
But by the way, just that stat on Pujara. Pujara going into the series averaged 159 against left-arm spin, and had only been dismissed 5 times in his career, or in some 2,000 deliveries that he'd faced against left-arm spin or something like that. Then in this one series, he's been out to Jack Leach 4 times.
That's impressive. But looking at India as a whole, their next Test match obviously is the World Test Championship final, which I am so excited for. Oh my God, I cannot wait.
That should be fun.
That would be very fun.
If it isn't in Lords, which it may not be, then some of the advantages that New Zealand would get because of their fast bowling attack would be negated. Though India also obviously has a really good fast bowling attack, but the green conditions that New Zealand thrives on, you probably aren't getting that in Manchester or in Southampton.
No, I think it'll be really, really fun because I think it's such a unique occasion because you're going to get to see the 2 best teams in the world by a long shot. I think New Zealand have been pretty outstanding in Test cricket over the last few years, and India obviously number 1 side in the world. I think if there was a question mark about who was the top side at this point, because New Zealand don't tend to play a lot of cricket anyway. So you don't get to see their true selves. The other thing is New Zealand haven't consistently won Test series away from home in difficult countries like South Africa, England, Australia, and India. Much like we discussed the SENA countries as Indians. I think it's the same for New Zealand and Australia going the other way.
They did pull off a win against Pakistan in the UAE, which, I mean, we might laugh at it, but beating Pakistan in the UAE has been tough.
That's a pretty difficult thing to do. So I'm not denying that, and I genuinely think that the second best side they're one of the 2 best sides in the world. We'll find out who's the best.
I mean, it showed when we played them in New Zealand, the home advantage that they had. They made they made hay in that series. India really struggled batting, bowling. it was much like how England struggled in India this series. India struggled in New Zealand. Then it's a fascinating. In fact, I think this is the ideal test final matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're two evenly matched teams. I think New Zealand have got a
and it's a
gun batting
neutral.
lineup as well.
And
I
this
think
is something that, as a thought experience, we love saying, oh, give these two sides who are really good, give them a neutral venue and see what happens. Here we go.
here we are, and it's perfect. I think we've already spoken about how good India are. They'll probably only make one change if it's in Southampton. If there's a temptation to play, say, two spinners, then Jadeja will automatically come back in.
I think it's very harsh on Akshar Patel, but I think if Jadeja is fit, sadly, Akshar Patel would have to make way
No,
for it.
I'm
It's
not
like-
even saying that. I'm saying in England, Akshar Patel misses out anyway. They'll play third seamer.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, for sure. But what I'm saying is, for example, in this in this match, our bowlers were Siraj, Ishant, and Washid and Akshar and Ashwin. Even if we do play two spinners and three seamers, probably Siraj makes way, Bumrah, and one of Shami or Umesh comes back if Shami's fit by then. And
Has to be Shami.
Yeah. So probably your spin your three pacers would be Ishant, Shami, and Bumrah. Yeah. Akshar, and then if your second spinner, it won't be Akshar and Ashwin. It would be, unless if Jadeja's fit, is Jadeja. Yeah. And you know what? We've shown this ruthlessness before. Karun Nair with his triple century, but the moment Rahane was fit, he came back into the side.
Yeah.
We're talking 5 years ago, but and it's good, and it also just means that you have some great depth in your your squad.
I think over the last 3 months since the first Australia test, all that's been proven is that the strength and depth of Indian cricket is second to none. You see Australia fighting sort of really hard to find good backup players. Having said that, and they spoke a lot about Cam Green. Cam Green has been absolutely murdering bowling attacks in Sheffield Shield cricket. So, we only got a little taster, and I think I genuinely now I do take a few things back that I said about him, because I've watched him torture attacks over the last 2 weeks. That guy can become a really, really good cricketer. His bowling needs to catch up, not the batting.
Yeah, but I think that's also a case of, if he's comes in as a batsman who can bowl a bit, and you have a frontline attack of Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark.
Yeah. But let's not go into Australia, because that's a whole other discussion. But we'll stick to India. And so, that would be the side for the World Test Championship. The strength in depth is great. I mean, Akshar Patel coming in, Washington Sundar, and the pace bowling depth, Saini, Siraj. Siraj has been outstanding since he's come in.
Siraj has been fantastic. Siraj, even in this match, obviously, this was a spin-dominated match from the bowling perspective, but he bowled some great. That ball to get
Joe Root in the first innings,
to get Joe Root was fantastic.
Fantastic.
It was just about as good a ball as what Stokes bowled to Rohit.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think that shows you the sort of grand scheme of things: depth in batting, depth in bowling. The only thing I would have wished for was Shubman Gill to get more runs, but
Shubman Gill had a decent first test in this series, where he got out stupidly in the first innings, hit a 50 in the second innings. But even when he was in the first innings, though he got out stupidly, he looked good. But after that, somehow his batting just fell away a bit.
I think it's a bit of a learning curve.
But also, exactly. He'll figure out his strategy.
So we're not too worried. And if there was any doubt over Rohit Sharma before this series, he's ended it, boss. He has completely ended it. He is now our first choice opening batsman in all conditions. I think that's been proven. And that's pretty much all you can say about India. There's not much else. I mean, we were outstanding in the last 3 tests. Successfully outgunned England. Then there's the question of the pitches. We've discussed it at length. I mean, they mourned over those 2 wickets, and then when they got one, they shit the bed. So,
can I just say, we've done some excellent trolling whenever we've had the opportunity. I don't mean you and me. I mean the actual Indian cricket team, players and officials of the Indian cricket team. Ravi Shastri in his post-match saying, "Hats off to the groundsman."
This is true. This is very true. But listen, we have a set of things as we come towards the end of this podcast. Number one, troll of the week, Ravi Shastri, for that comment.
And the number two troll of the week, also from Ravi Shastri, when all this talk is happening about, Arey, why are we making so much disrespectful memes about Ravi Shastri and his drinking? And Ravi Shastri is like, guys, you guys want to be happy, you want to make fun, this is great. Have a drink on me also.
Whether it be nimbu pani, chai, or a drink, have a drink. But that's Ravi Shastri for you. That is Ravi Shastri. I mean, he's great, man. There's nothing I can say about him. He's been absolutely brilliant.
Oh, and the third best thing in terms of not necessarily trolling but cheekiness. I don't know if you saw Harsha Bogle's interview with Pant.
Oh yeah, I was about to bring that up actually. I was about to bring that up. Yeah.
So for anyone who didn't see this, basically Harsha Bogle at the very end, after the standard post-match interview talking about the innings, whatnot, he's like, "Acha, people have said ki when when Pant is keeping, the commentators should stay silent and just tune into the commentary Pant gives from behind the sun." And Pant is like, "Sir, I don't know if that is a compliment to me or if you guys need to improve."
It's completely brilliant. So cheeky, so tongue-in-cheek, man. Oh my God, he's such a character, Rishabh Pant. I mean, you know what? I haven't enjoyed an individual character in the Indian side this much since Sehwag. Since Sehwag.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's very true. And it's a complete polar opposite to his predecessor. Dhoni was Dhoni could be fairly witty behind the stumps, but he was not so animated also. Right. And so Pant is just like non-stop and hilarious.
Absolutely hilarious. But it just shows you in the 5-6 years since Kohli's taken, sorry, was it 7 years now since he took over the captaincy? 20, was it 2015? Sorry, 2015, 6 years.
2014. 2014.
2014. Yeah, so 6 years. It was just around the time. It was that series before the World Cup in Australia.
It was the Australia series.
Yeah. Since he's taken the captaincy, we've come so far in terms of Test cricket. It's unbelievable. Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, we've won in Australia twice. That tells you a story. We never won it. We never won a single series. Single series in Australia.
We won with like our B team effectively.
Yeah. And
so the way he's empowered people and got back, he, Shastri, the whole setup has made players, I think, a lot better. And of course, we've unearthed talents as India have done a lot over the last couple decades in general. But yeah, it's hats off to the entire setup at this point.
At this point, the other thing I want to mention is that, again, I'll go back to Ravi Shastri and his interview. He said that just the amount of praise that he has given Sridhar and Bharat Arun, the two coaches along with him. I remember when I was growing up as a younger kid in Bombay, there was always this thing, we don't know how to play foreign ways, Australian ways. You have to get a coach from outside. You've now proved it with 3 from India. They're all Indian.
Yeah.
They're not getting the credit that they deserve. It's something that he's absolutely right there. People have to look at it. And there's another Indian coach in another team that has done exceptionally well. His name is Sridharan Sriram, and he's Australia's spin bowling coach. Nathan Lyons credited him for a lot of his improvements. So Indian coaches can work if people are serious about winning in India. You probably hire more Indian consultants, coaches, things like that. But at this point, our domination of Test cricket is complete. Now all we have to do is win the World Test Championship final.
Yes, that World Test Championship final, win that. We have series like I said, I mentioned England. We also have a series in South Africa after that. And those are the last 2. I mean, we won in England before, obviously, but I think for Kohli's captaincy, those are the last 2 frontiers. I mean, we've never won in South Africa, and Kohli hasn't won a series in England, so that would be big for him.
I think, again, you go and say that it's probably the best. We thought 2018 was one of India's best chances to win in England. I think this one now in 2021 is an even bigger chance to win in England. And the series,
and it would be a very good chance in South Africa, because South
Africa was significantly weaker side than the last time we toured.
Yeah.
So I think that would be very interesting. We also, in our roundup, forgot to include South Africa. They've had a change in captaincy. Obviously, we knew Faf du Plessis was outgoing. Quinton de Kock was only temporary. So Dean Elgar has been named their Test captain, and Temba Bavuma has been named permanent captain. for both the limited overs formats, T20 and ODIs. And that's big because I think he's the first permanent black captain of South Africa.
Which is huge. It's
That
a
is
big,
massive.
big
That is
moment for them.
massive moment for them.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a huge sort of thing on that. We'll finish this off with our No Balls Cricket Awards. Do we actually have a No Balls award, like for an actual no ball for this test match?
I don't think we have an award for a no ball for this test match or cricket in general. But I think if we're going to give an award to anyone, it has to be Akila Dhananjaya. Because that is the most mental 2 overs I've ever seen in international cricket. To go from hat-trick in 1 over to 6 sixes, being carted for 6 sixes in the next.
Or I have an alternate thought. Were you watching that moment where Kohli pings a throw in and it hits Root in the crotch? And he just yells, "Oh, come on, Virat!"
I think we'll
stick with Dhananjaya.
Yeah, let's just call it a tie between the two.
Let's call it a tie. So our joint winners this week: Kohli for literally trying to take Root's balls out, and Akila Dhananjaya for the most mental 2 overs in cricket history, to go from a hat trick to being hit for 6 sixes in an over. That's wild. Also, we give our crazy batting awards to, that's also joint, Rishabh Pant for that, whatever the hell that shot was.
And the reverse scoop,
and Kieron Pollard, obviously. And
for 6 sixes.
Our flop of the week was England's so-called best player of spin, Johnny Bairstow. He went from being Johnny Bairstow to then scoring a few runs and then having a first bowler. So he's our flop of the week. On the next episode, we will be covering the West Indies Sri Lanka series. We will get Ian on for that. That should be quite fun.
Yeah.
And we look forward to a few things now. First and foremost, next Friday, India and England T20Is. England probably the better side in one-day cricket than India.
Yeah, at this point, yes.
But that will be a very, very fun series. They're two powerful teams. So get prepared for it. That'll be fireworks, man. And they're both good sides. So it should be really fun to watch. Also, more on the West Indies Sri Lanka series. Obviously, there's ODIs and test matches after the T20s. So that should be our next week. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode of No Balls Cricket. India, of course, back to the number 1 ranking in Test cricket, qualified for the World Test Championship final despite all the odds. And as Ravi Shastri says, have a drink on him.
Bottoms up.
Bottoms up. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And one we always forget is click on that damn Ghanta bell icon in the corner, because that will give you updates on when we post our weekly podcasts.
And otherwise, please subscribe to us on either, please follow us rather on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts. Am I missing any?
Podcast Addict.
Podcast Addict, yes.
Yes, Podcast Addict as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it from us. It's been a good week. We've gloated. I'm going to go into clinics on Wednesday, and Charles is not going to talk to me again. Hopefully he does. He's going to be very angry. He was not happy with the pitches last week. Hopefully
I need to find some England cricket fans in New York so I can gloat. Maybe that can be my St. Patrick's Day mission.
Also, I have sent a feeler out to Rishabh Pant to try and get him on our podcast. Obviously, he hasn't responded yet, but just
we should note here right now we have feelers out to Ravi Shastri, Rishabh Pant, and very randomly Edwin van der Sar.
Edwin van der Sar as well. And the next one we're going to do is for Sunil Gavaskar, who has been
joined Instagram
now after he celebrated his 50th anniversary of being an Indian cricketer. That's it from us. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, guys.